9 bodies. Snow stained a strange reddish color, and a tent ripped open from the inside. Back in February 1959, deep within the Ural Mountains of Russia, something truly horrific took place. Something that, to this very day, no one has been able to fully explain. This chilling event would become known to the world as the Dyatlov Pass incident. It all started with a group of 9 experienced hikers and skiers, embarking on a challenging expedition from which they would never return. When their remains were eventually discovered, the scene was something straight out of a horror movie. Some had suffered internal injuries so severe they were comparable to the force of a car crash. One victim was found with her tongue torn out, others were missing their eyes. And all of this was found in the deadening silence of the eternal snows of Soviet Russia. The group was led by a man named Igor Dyatlov. Every single member was young, determined, and highly experienced in surviving harsh, snowy conditions. They set off on their journey on January 23rd, their destination being the formidable Ural Mountains, a frozen expanse sometimes called the Mountain of the Dead by the local Mansi people. 3 weeks passed with no word. A search and rescue team was dispatched. They eventually located the group's abandoned tent. It was torn, not from the outside by an animal or another person, but from the inside out. It was as if something had terrified them so profoundly that they were forced to slash their way out and flee desperately into the freezing night, some of them barefoot, into temperatures that plunged to -30 degrees Celsius. The bodies were discovered scattered across the landscape in different locations, each telling a piece of a baffling and terrifying story. 2 were found under a large pine tree, near the remnants of a small fire, with no shoes on their feet. 3 more were found on the path between the tree and the camp, seemingly trying to make their way back to the tent. But it was the last 4 bodies that presented the most disturbing puzzle. They were found months later in a ravine, partially buried under the snow. They had suffered catastrophic injuries, broken ribs, crushed skulls, and one, Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue. So, what happened out there? The official investigation was inconclusive, leading to decades of speculation. Could it have been an avalanche? This theory has been proposed many times, but it doesn't quite fit. Experienced skiers like them would likely have recognized the signs. Plus, an avalanche wouldn't explain why they fled the relative safety of the tent, or the specific, brutal nature of their injuries. Without corresponding external trauma, what about an animal attack? A bear, perhaps. Again, it doesn't hold up. There were no animal tracks found anywhere near the tent or the bodies, and a bear attack would have left behind very different kinds of wounds, obvious external signs of a struggle, bites, and claw marks, none of which were present. The internal damage was the primary mystery. This leads us to the more outlandish, and perhaps more compelling, theories. What about those massive internal injuries? They were consistent with a blast wave, a sudden, immense pressure change. This has led many to believe they were victims of a secret Soviet military weapons test gone wrong. Was it a new type of concussive bomb? This might explain why they fled the tent and the strange internal trauma. It could also potentially explain the traces of radiation found on some of their clothing. Investigators at the time did note the presence of low-level radiation, but its origin was never determined. And then there's the truly strange element. Reports from other hikers and locals in the region mention seeing strange lights or glowing orange spheres in the sky on the very night the group is believed to have perished. This has fueled theories involving unidentified flying objects. Did the hikers stumble upon something not of this world? Did they witness a UFO landing or crash? And were they eliminated because of what they saw? Some investigators even considered that the group might have been attacked by local Mansi tribesmen for trespassing on sacred lands. However, this was quickly ruled out. The nature of the injuries didn't match any known tribal practices, and there were no signs of a human struggle, no other footprints besides those of the hikers themselves. The KGB's involvement adds another layer of intrigue. The initial investigation was shut down quickly, and the files were classified for decades. Did they know more than they let on? Were they covering up a military disaster, a failed rocket launch, or something even more bizarre? The lead investigator at the time, Lev Ivanov, later said that he was ordered by high-ranking officials to close the case, and that he believed the bright flying spheres were directly connected to the group's death. Could it have been something called This is a phenomenon where low-frequency sound, below the range of human hearing, can be generated by certain wind conditions, like wind moving over a mountain ridge. Infrasound is known to cause feelings of intense panic, dread, and nausea, which could explain why they fled their tent in a state of irrational terror. This, combined with hypothermia, could have led to their deaths, but it still doesn't fully account for the brutal physical injuries of the last 4 victims. A more recent theory, put forth by Russian prosecutors who reopened the case in 2019, combined several elements. They concluded that a small slab avalanche forced the group from their tent. In the darkness and confusion, they became separated. One group made a fire while trying to wait out the danger, but ultimately succumbed to the cold. The other group fell into a ravine in the darkness, and the force of the fall onto the hard, rocky bottom caused their massive internal injuries. This theory sounds plausible, but for many, it still leaves too many questions unanswered. Why were there no external injuries from the fall? What about the missing tongue and eyes? Post-mortem animal scavenging could be an explanation, but it feels too neat for some. And what about the radiation and the strange lights in the sky? Today, more than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass case remains one of the greatest and most chilling unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. A story of experienced adventurers who met a terrifying end in the remote, frozen wilderness. Was it a natural event, a military cover-up, or something altogether more sinister and paranormal? The truth, it seems, was buried with them in the snow. What do you think really happened on that mountain? Do you lean towards a scientific explanation, or do you believe something far stranger was at play? Let me know your theory in the comments section below. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think. And if you're fascinated by sinister mysteries, dark conspiracies, and facts that make you question reality, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we believe the truth never sleeps. Thanks for watching.